Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and we are still making our way through Line 5, the book that I helped write when I was working at Life Dynamics in the 1990s. We're still in Chapter 1, and we're looking at infection. And just as with our last chapter, anesthesia mishaps, most of the cases in Line 5 are deaths that I've already covered, but if you follow the link below, you can follow links to more details and source documents. So it covered, first of all, two that we got from medical journal articles. One is 26-year-old woman that we dubbed Andrea, who went for a safe legal abortion at a New York City facility in 1971 and developed a fatal infection. And then a woman we called Tammy, who traveled from Ohio to New York for an abortion in 1971 that caused a fatal infection. Then we have Julia Rogers, who went to Frendship Medical Center in Chicago, run by civil rights activist Theodore Roosevelt Mason Howard, TRM Howard, who went from civil rights champion to quack abortionist for some reason. Not only performed the abortion that gave Julia a fatal infection, but at that clinic, Evelyn Dudley and Dorothy Brown also died after their abortions. Then we come to a really charming fellow, Dr. Robert Julius Sherman. 16-year-old Rita McDowell went to him with her mother in March of 1975. She was in the second trimester of pregnancy, but Sherman used a suction cannula that no way would it even have gotten a 12-week fetus out, much less a second trimester fetus. And then he discharged Rita and told her mother that Rita would probably pass the fetus that night. Rita didn't. She developed an infection, collapsed screaming in her mother's arms, and she was taken to the hospital where doctors removed the mangled fetus, but Rita still died from infection. An investigation revealed that Sherman had a habit of deliberately performing incomplete abortions so that he could charge Medicaid more for follow-up. Then we're back to the Chicago Sun-Times expose series. Diane Smith suffered a fatal infection after a safe legal abortion in the Chicago area. Then we get to somebody who's actually held accountable for what he did. James Franklin in Denver performed an abortion on 26-year-old Betty D'Amato in August of 1980. Like Sherman, he knew he had performed an incomplete abortion. I don't know if he deliberately did an incomplete abortion or whether he just tried and couldn't finish. But he gave her a trash bag and told her, just collect whatever you expel and bring it back. But 2 days later, she was dead from infection. And believe it or not, he was convicted of manslaughter in Betty's death and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Then a girl that her name's redacted on the documents, but we call her Gwen Newhart. She underwent a second abortion performed by Dr. E. Wyman Garrett in Newark at the age of 14 in 1994. She was 22 weeks pregnant. After she was sent home, she began vomiting. She had abdominal pain and a high fever, and the next morning, Gwen's mother found her dead on the bathroom floor. An autopsy revealed that her abdomen was full of pus and adhesions from an infection introduced by a perforation in her uterus. Then we have 18-year-old Michelle Madden, who went to O.B. Evans at Family Planning Medical Center of Mobile, Alabama in November of 1986. She sought out an abortion because her doctor had told her that her epilepsy medication would have harmed her baby. 3 days after the abortion, she collapsed and was taken to the hospital, where doctors found a leg bone, 2 pieces of skull, and some placenta still in her uterus. But the surgery was too late to save her. She died from the infection. Then we have Ingrid Thomas, who underwent an abortion performed by Kanu Varani. She developed peritonitis and died. And then the last of the deaths in that section of Chapter 1 is Jamie Garcia. And you can follow the link. I cover her rather gruesome death in excruciating detail. The clinic was filthy and inadequately staffed. And it was owned by Dr. Moshe Hakimovich, who also owned the CD clinic in Arizona where Luann Heron and Lisa Bardsley underwent their fatal abortions, and he himself performed the fatal abortions on Tanya Williamson, Luz Rodriguez, and Christina Goswine. Then we have the cases where the women survived their ordeals. I need further source documents, so please, follow the link, and if you can get access to these, you might even contact Life Dynamics and say you're doing your own research and ask for them. Mark Kretcher doesn't play well with others necessarily, so I don't think he'd give them to me. But a woman we call Gloria went to a hospital for an abortion in 1970. She suffered an infection and bladder problems and had to have a hysterectomy and a colostomy and was incapacitated for nearly 3 years. A young woman we call Chris was 20 when she underwent a second trimester abortion in December of 1976. It was done with prostaglandin, which was a chemical that caused such severe contractions that the fetus would die of crushing injuries. And sometimes the contractions were so bad they would actually decapitate the fetus or cause the woman's cervix to just rip right off. It frequently caused tears in the uterus. And the doctor did suspect a tear in Chris's uterus and put her on IV antibiotics. That didn't clear up the sepsis. They did surgery and found out that her uterus had actually gone necrotic, so they did a hysterectomy. She had gas gangrene. She suffered such severe organ damage that she had to go on to dialysis. Then we have Terry, who had an abortion in August of 1984. She went to the hospital on September 3rd because she was passing clots the size of golf balls, and the staff were unable to contact the man who'd done the abortion. Terry had a fever of 106 and her abdomen was full of pus, but she did manage to recover under hospital care. Then we have a woman who was injured by National Abortion Federation member Abu, the butcher of Avenue A, Hayat. And if you even look at pictures of the outside of his clinic, it was disgusting. So obviously, at that time, they didn't even drive past and look at it before they gave you membership. You pay your dues, you're good. Marie went to Hayat on March 17, 1991 for an abortion. Hayat started it, then said that Marie was further along than he thought, and he wanted another $500 to finish the abortion. Marie's husband pleaded with Hayat to finish, said he didn't have $500, but he'd bring it tomorrow. But Hayat just ejected her from the premises, still sedated and bleeding. And the next day, her husband took her to the hospital. She was admitted with a distended abdomen, foul and bloody vaginal discharge, and pieces of fetal tissue and laminaria protruding from her cervix. The doctors completed the abortion and treated the sepsis. Now, probably because of the brouhaha over some other cases, including the death of 17-year-old Sophie McCoy and the maiming of a 32-week baby who was born alive but missing the arm Hayat had ripped off, the authorities decided to crack down pretty hard on him. He was convicted of assault and falsification of records for his treatment of Marie. So, to learn more about these cases, a lot of them I do have source documents, and you can follow the links and learn more. Also, I do make note of what documents I do need so that I have my original source documents. Keep following us as we chug along through Line 5.